Dawntrail released about 2 weeks ago now, and I have finished the story. Since then, I've been mulling over what I've seen and thought maybe I'd give you guys a different kind of video. One that goes over my thoughts about Dawntrail's story. I won't talk about combat or the graphics update, I'll keep it all directed towards story. This will also be a video to show that I am not dead. Yes, the channel has not had a post in it in almost 2 months, but I had nearly no free time to do anything, and the little free time I had, I didn't really want to spend it on editing footage. But I have time now, I can start making videos once more. The next video I'm going to upload is the Viper story quest, so if you're interested in that, don't forget to drop a sub. Oh yeah, spoilers ahead. Duh. A little background before I speak about my opinions. If I'm honest, I wasn't really all that hype about Dawntrail. There was no way to truly predict what was going to happen because there was not a lot of lore to go off of anymore. The writers could create an entirely new race of ancients that lived on the other side of the continent that wasn't precedented in the story before, if they really wanted to. I knew going in the story was going to be in the same vein as A Realm Reborn. Low stakes, major setup for everything to come down the line. It's hard to be excited for that after experiencing highs like Heavensward, Shadowbringers, and Endwalker. But did I like it? Did I hate it? Let's have a discussion. I think the best way to cover Dawntrail is to cover everything before the Rite of Succession and everything after. That was the real turning point in the story for a lot of people. What did I like about everything pre-Rite of Succession? Let's start with the characters. Ul'dah was a badass old man. I wish we got to see more of him in his prime. I wish we got to fight him in his prime one-on-one, and not the shade that we fought in the final feat. He was basically the warrior of light for Tuliyollal. The respect the people had for him will be forever remembered. Even the twins came to see the nation he built and used that knowledge to better Garlemald. Koana is an interesting character. He left his home in search of knowledge he wishes to impart upon his people. He seemed the most fit to rule out of everyone else in the beginning. He grows as a person and learns to respect tradition while still wanting to ease the lives of everyone. His biggest turning point was when he realized that Ul'dah was a better ruler than he'll ever be, so he sacrifices his chances of becoming a ruler to help her get into power instead. Sadly, he gets thrown to the side in the second half of the story because he needs to stay behind to set up countermeasures. Ul'dah. I liked his character personally, at least before everything went down. He seemed like a better written version of Ul'dah. All that strength, emotionless, prideful but not boastful. Kral saw the well of hatred he wishes to unleash upon the world, yet we knew he'd never win because he did not want to do these silly trials, much like Ul'dah. He even had some moments, especially when he helped the rest of us stop Valigarmanda. Yeah, I liked his character. Now anything post-Rite of Succession, oh boy, we'll save that for later. Ul'dah. Would it be right to call her the most divisive character in Final Fantasy XIV history? Hard to say. In my opinion, I didn't mind her, at least before the Rite of Succession ends. I didn't hate being the Merlin to her King Arthur. I in fact loved the moments where people realized that we were honestly way stronger than they had ever assumed. But we never used that strength and instead allowed Ul'dah to grow. And grow she does. We watch her go from an absolute ignorant child into a pretty decent ruler with potential to become better than her father. Though I can see how some people dislike her. She eats the roles the Warrior of Light and the Scions would have had in previous expansions. This is where the positives for the first half end for me though. While I liked the characters, I really didn't care for what we were doing. This is not to say I hated it. Some of my favorite moments of the expansion are in the Feat of Brotherhood, but the length of the story was insane. These quests had no substance, no stakes. At best you could say that each zone we visited was a Beast Tribe quest slapped into a main story. I can completely understand how people didn't stay focused for the first 10 hours or so. It is truly a test of patience. Even as someone who reads every single line of dialogue for the videos I make, there were times I had to stand up and take a break. I've read visual novels that are longer than this and completely unvoiced without needing to do these things. The stakes were even lower than they were in A Realm Reborn, because at least the Primals were a threat. They messed with the ether on Aetheris and could wipe out a nation if the Beastmen wanted them to. The only time we felt somewhat threatened was with the release of Valigar Manda, who in the end didn't do too much damage and got released in the most idiotic way by Bakul Jaja. Speaking of Bakul Jaja, I'd say this character kind of sucked. I didn't like him at all when he was a villain. Every time he'd sneak off giggling with his subordinates like a cartoon villain. They'd start prepping to do some villainy, skipping the meaning of every trial because they didn't want to play these stupid games. He released Valigar Manda just because he wanted to get a head start on the next feat, but then he got stopped because they wouldn't reveal it without all the contestants there, making him doing that even more stupid. Now I do like the character once we learn about his past, but it does not forgive what he did. That being kidnapping Wuklamat and setting free a super beast capable of destroying Tuliolol. But we can understand his desperation and his need to become a successor when we visit his village and learn of his plight. So while it's a negative, again, I actually like his character going forward. The next part specifically counts for all of Dawntrail, but the unvoiced dialogue is a major letdown. It felt way more apparent in Dawntrail, and to be honest, it felt like it was way more common. I feel in part this was because they started to do a lot more cutscenes compared to scenes of us standing around in the overworld with a text box at the bottom of the screen. Also, the unvoiced dialogue direction was strange. Sometimes a cutscene would start voiced and immediately become unvoiced. Sometimes a cutscene would start unvoiced and immediately become voiced. Important information is easily missed by people who assume unvoiced equals skip, because that's usually been the case. 9 times out of 10, if it's important enough, it'll be mentioned in a voiced cutscene, but in Dawntrail that did not happen at all. A really good example, and I know this is from the Post-Rite of Succession, but I'm still going to mention it. The Avengers moment. The evasion happens. We need to find a way to pierce the electric bubble that appeared after the attack. We gather people from all corners of our journey and bring them together to create a train capable of ramming into the barrier and granting us entry. Reuniting with all these people, you think it'd be a pretty important moment, yet it's not voiced. Why? If a cutscene was going to be voiced, it had to be this one, surely. At least my channel exists to summarize story. Hours of unvoiced content could be easily summarized in a paragraph or two. So if you skipped but are still interested in following along with the story, don't forget to drop a sub. Oh boy, I mean, we already started talking about the Post-Rite of Succession stuff, so we might as well full pivot to it. So let's talk about it. Again, we'll start with the positives. The good. Alexandria is an interesting concept. I like that these two places merged in an instant when Zaralja opened the Golden City, especially trying to wrap your head around the idea that it happened 30 years in the past for them, but almost hours ago for us. Which, if you remember in Shadowbringers, we're told that time flows differently between reflections. We were lucky with the First and the Source having almost synchronized time between the two for the time we were there, so the 30-year debacle makes sense. Though that's where praise for Alexandria disappears. Again, the quest sorta ends up like a Beast Tribe quest until we meet Kakiwa. Just to mention, by Alexandria I mean the outskirts of Solution 9, not Alexandria the nation and its people as a whole. Kakiwa is the first one to really explain the soul technology used by Alexandria and its people, and it's fascinating, and wrong on so many levels. We've been taught in-game for a long time that souls are precious, they're important. We know about the ethereal sea, we understand the cycle of death and rebirth. We've seen with our own very two eyes that death does not truly mean the end, and eventually all souls are reborn. Azem is reborn in us, Hermes was reborn in Amon, and the traits of those who came before still affect those who came after. So to take souls that still have potential to live once more and consume them as a safety net, or for sudden bursts of strength, it's foreign, enraging. The character's reaction proved this, yet Alexandrians are okay with it, and in fact depend on it. The anxiety the people feel when they don't have at least one soul as a safety net is real and believable. Just imagine how paralyzing it is to know that at any waking moment you could die your final death. Obviously everyone else deals with this daily, but the Alexandrians never had to. Though they use souls as currency, they are running out of them. So how else should they get more if not invade other reflections and harvest their life force? At first we believed the plan to invade Tuliyollal was Zoralja's doing, but it wasn't. It was instead Queen Sphène's. Queen Sphène, what a beautifully written character. In life she was a benevolent queen who loved her people. Her death was early and tragic, and thus people began the technologies to create the Endless. She was the first of them, and programmed to not only have Sphène's personality as a whole, but a never-ending need to preserve all life in Alexandria, including the other Endless. Thus began her conflict. The benevolent queen she was in life completely contradicts the killing machine she needed to become to sustain her people. So much so that we can see it pain her in every moment she's with us. One moment she's acting friendly, another moment she can act cold and distant. I imagine in her heart of hearts she wanted to hope that we were nothing like her and her people, so it'd be easier to wipe us out. But upon learning and gaining a deeper connection with the Warrior of Light and Wuk-Lamat, she starts to break down, until she concludes that she needs to wipe out her benevolent side and do what's best for her people. All the sadder when it comes to blows in the end, because we really did want to try and find a solution where both sides can improve without bloodshed. In another time, another place, we would have been good friends. Such a good character, way better than Zoralja as a villain in every single way. Also, another fantastic character I enjoyed was Kakiwa. I really enjoyed her voice acting. She sounded endearing and caring. I thought we might never meet her after everything, but I'm so glad we did. I enjoyed every single scene she was in, and I really enjoyed seeing the relationship she had with Erenville. It was also sad to slowly see the realization setting in, that his mother is actually dead. All we're interacting with is an Endless, which adds weight to the Endless as a whole, because if they can be as real as someone like Kakiwa, then it makes what we have to do in the Living Memory even harder. Living Memory. What a beautiful zone. Truly, it is the best part of Dawntrail. Everything from the music to the art direction, it was perfect. The Endless here are aware that their lives are over. They're aware that they're only alive because of the needless bloodshed that is needed to sustain them. They are happy for the opportunities provided to them because of the Endless system, while also agreeing that if it all shut down, they'd be happy to sit back and let nothingness embrace them once more. It is filled with bittersweet goodbyes, but goodbyes that could only happen because of the technology the preservation had created. If not for their creation, Wuk-Lamat would have never got her final goodbye with Namika. Erenville would have never known what happened to his mother and got to spend every waking hour he could with her in her final moments. Kral would have never met her parents and learned about her own people and culture. And we would have never met Sir Otis, captain of the Knights of Alexandria, in the flesh. Or in the memory, I suppose. To meet all these people and realize we had to shut down each and every memory bank, co-signing their second deaths to save our own. It was hard to do. Extremely hard. Especially when the zone loses all of its life when we do. We are left with an empty, barren wasteland, devoid of music and life, wiped out in an instant. It makes what you've done hit all the more harder. It almost brought me to tears, but we had to push through, and we did what we needed to do. Because like Raha said, we cannot sacrifice the living to prolong the memory of Sphène's dead. I still can't believe Solution 9 is a zone in-game. I remember reaching here and sending screenshots to friends who don't play anymore and have them guess the game I'm playing. Not a single one would guess Final Fantasy XIV, not in a million years. Story-wise, I love being in an underground group of rebels. The cast there was fun. We even found yet another shard of Geralt. Ugh, it makes me shiver just thinking about it. But luckily he didn't want us to do anything too crazy for him. Ul'dah, Zoralja's son. Yeah, it isn't really explained if he's a clone or someone actually had a child with him, but he's here, and he's adorable. So many scenes with him were honestly agonizing. We learn about his horrible childhood, and slowly but surely earn his trust. He finally gains the courage to speak with us, only to lose it all when he overhears that we're going to kill his father. At the time, he is unaware about all the terrible things he's done and fears truly being alone with no family. He only realizes how much of a terrible person his father is when he uses him as bait to get us to finally launch an assault on the Everkeep. He's a clever boy and understands that his father needs to be killed for the betterment of the world. But to be without Otis and his father means that he will be truly alone, and this makes him break down. It is only when everyone reassures him that he will never ever truly be alone, because everyone will be there with him, that he accepts what's to come. He is given the king's authority in Zoraljah's final moments, a power he did not want to keep because his father used it only for evil, but once he saw how it could be used for good, he decided to keep it and become a king. At this point, it's had its many uses. For one, it outranked Queen Sphene's control over anything, which allowed us to open the gate to the Golden City with the help of Kryle's earring. Who knows what it will do down the line. A short final point, I don't know if it was just me, but I was caught off guard by the countermeasures deployed by Koana. I thought maybe he'd use Charlayan technology to create a barrier around the royal palace and have all the civilians stay inside and survive as long as they could. I did not expect Tuliyollal signing a treaty with the neutral nation Radzit Han, granting them the safety of Vritra. It was a treat to see a great worm absolutely demolish the offensive of the enemy. This scene gave me goosebumps. Now it is time for the bad parts of this half. I know I said I'd only talk about story stuff, but I feel like this is story related. There are a few moments where an in-game action scene would have done better than a cutscene. The first being the defense of Tuliyollal during Alexandria's siege. It would have been neat to have one on the same scale as the Solution 9 scene. Also, for the train scene where we were breaking through the enemy's barrier, I 100% expected to be shooting enemies out of the sky. Instead, it was just a cutscene. Next, we'll speak about Zoraljah. He is one of the worst villains we've had in a long time. I never felt threatened by him once. In terms of power, we could probably take him solo if he was never able to overpower Ul'dah. Even post-Alexandria upgrade should be an easy win. He could have used the element of surprise to wipe us out, but his ego wouldn't let him beat Koana and Wuk-Lamat like that. Thus, he gave them an ultimatum. He'll hold his forces back as long as Wuk-Lamat fights him 1 versus 1. We respected her wish to fight him, a fight she has no chance in hell of winning, and let him leave the room alive after killing Ul'dah. Next time we see him, he's being a tyrant, slaughtering his own people for more souls so he can consume them and become more of a threat. It was extremely cold and ruthless to see him cutting down civilians over and over throughout Solution 9. Only at this point, once he's eaten almost every soul in the repository, do I feel threatened by Zoraljah. And at this point we fight him all together. Not the 1 versus 1 like we had assumed. So if we were never going to get a 1 versus 1, then why not kill him before he could leave the royal palace ages ago? I don't know. I never liked his arc in any way, and they never explained his point of view well. We have seen people exactly like him going down the same path time and time again, and he also ignored our words, just like Varys did. They don't even try to redeem him in his final moments. They tried to say he had a horrible life, but it's a life we have never seen. A life Wuk-Lamat and Koana have only spoke positively on. We can understand he was under a lot of pressure, being the only child to ever survive being born of a gifted twin sibling. But still, all he does is relinquish his king's authority to Zoraljah before he dies a miserable, lonely death. Now, I know I praised Wuk-Lamat in the beginning of this video, but now that praise disappears. Post-Rite of Succession Wuk-Lamat overstays her welcome. Once shit really started to hit the fan, I was hoping we'd have time away from everyone. Once reflections are brought into the mix, it should have become the Scion's time to do Scion things. Instead, Wuk-Lamat was given a revenge plot against a man she cannot beat. I will say, I am a sucker for revenge stories, so I wouldn't have minded if she tagged along with the sole purpose of killing Zoraljah. But she still takes the forefront even after her story arc has concluded. Zoraljah is dead. Now her people need to heal after that attack. We're going into the City of Gold, basically a reflection. She's still tagging along with us at this point, still at the forefront, cannibalizing any potential Scion time we have in the last moments of this expansion. It honestly got on my nerves. While I didn't mind her existence in the Rite of Succession, in fact enjoyed it, I really did not like her inclusion in everything post-Rite of Succession. If she stayed behind to defend her city on the front lines, or she stayed once Zoralja was dead so we can finally get the old times with the Warrior of Light and their companions, it would have been nice, but instead, we never get that moment. Another thing to mention with her is the power scaling. What the hell is going on here? In the beginning of the story, Ul'dah was unable to beat Bakul Jaja in a 1 vs 1. He completely overpowered her at every turn, and it wasn't until she grew as a person, gained confidence in herself and her skills, and potentially had a little bit of help from Dynamis, that she was able to beat Bakul Jaja and prove herself his better. Once Zoralja murders his father, she swears vengeance on him, and he goads her into a 1 vs 1. A 1 vs 1 she has no chance in hell of winning. Zoralja pre-Alexandrian upgrade made Bakul Jaja keel over in a single punch. So this Zoralja post-upgrade would have no trouble beating Ul'dah without using any soul technology. So much so that they never even get the chance to do a 1 vs 1, and in the end it becomes a trial, and all of us combine our might together to take down Zoralja after he's consumed an uncounted number of souls. Fast forward a bit more to the final fight against Fiend. All the Scions are sent away. Finally, it is our time to shine for the first time this expansion. Our time to show why we are the ass-kicking machine that we are, and why our name has gone down in legend. Cue the Ultima theme, let's go. About halfway through this battle, the barrier keeping everyone out weakens, and who is the first to break it? Not Raha, not Kryl, but Ul'dah. Ul'dah breaks down the barrier, enters the fray, and fights alongside the Warrior of Light. She holds back Fiend's attacks alone and overpowers her. Sure, Dynamis exists as a cop-out, but to increase someone's strength by such a factor. A character who couldn't beat base Zoralja is now fighting Sphene in her robotic form. Make it make sense. It's also now a forced transition, so that trial is forever plagued by that moment. I think it would have been much cooler if the off-tank had to active time maneuver to hold Sphene off while everyone else was still attacking, kind of like the Susanoo fight. As I mentioned before, Ul'dah's inclusion in the post-Rite of Succession stuff meant that the Scions needed to become background characters to allow her to shine. Ul'dah took traits from some of the Scions, so we ended up getting less of them overall in the entire expansion. Though some of it is not really her fault. It's not like she can take away scenes that require knowledge of the ethereal, away from Raha, Y'shtola, and Urian J, but there were scenes where Alphinaud would have been at the forefront, being the diplomat for us in previous expansions, but they were instead taken by Ul'dah and her inquisitive nature to learn about all the peoples. Some scenes with Alisaie where she would have been hot-headed or rushing headfirst into things were overshadowed by Ul'dah, who is even more hot-headed than her and constantly rushed headfirst into things. I am very disappointed in the way Kryl's story was executed. It had been a long time coming to learn why her grandpa abandoned the students of Baldesion, to learn of her origin. She never had a leading role in an expansion because she was a support. She understood this and took up the role of Pictomancer. Finally, all the questions they've been building up about Kryl are going to be answered. I assumed that the Rite of Succession was going to be a means to an end. It was going to be the plot point which got us around the world of Tuliyollal and made us learn about Kryl more, who, after everything was said and done, she'd become the main character. We'd visit her reflection. She'd be the one asking all of these questions about Alexandria because she is so curious about anything and everything. To have this opportunity to learn about her real world and their cultures, all of it culminating in her finding her real parents in the living world as endless, speaking to them for the fleeting moments they had, and she'd be the one to erase them. Instead, we only get that 1 hour in the living memory and maybe 15 minutes throughout the entire expansion. I really wish we spent a lot more time with her, because now we have all the answers. Now there's nothing to learn, and there's a chance she falls to the wayside once more. Thancred and Urian J were hyped up to be on the opposing side of us for once. That pretty much amounted to nothing. There was a bit of talk about competition between your peers, but we ended up working with them more than against them. Not even a combat where you face against them. Very underutilized, very sad overall. Y'shtola, Raha, and Estinian were entirely non-existent in the story. If the Dawntrail trailer was based on how long each character showed in the story, then Wukla should have been in every single second of it, and the Scion should have been less present. And that's my thoughts as of right now. I don't like to rate things out of 10 really, it doesn't really do it justice. Overall, I say I'm relatively happy with Dawntrail, and I'm excited for the future prospects to come. The groundwork laid for the future is tremendous. We have technology now capable of opening rifts into a different reflection. Technology we've been after ever since we returned from the first. Said technology also had the symbol of a Zem appear on top of it. The ideas that can come out of this are endless. No pun intended. Dawntrail is going to walk, so whatever future expansion that comes after can run. Hopefully we'll reach the same highs as Heavensward, Shadowbringer, and Endwalker in the years to come. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you want summarized lore, consider subscribing. I would love to hear your opinions on Dawntrail in the comments below. Did you like it? Hate it? What do you think the patches are going to be based on? And on that note, I'll see you all in the next video. May you always walk in the light of the crystal.